1. Our yearning anticipates landfall, throws hope as an anchor towards the shore. St. Augustine of Hippo.
She was free! Aechna clambered over the bramble hedge of the farmstead, tumbled into the ditch beyond, and clawed her way up the opposite slope. She paused for a heartbeat to glance back at the compound. Her master was still down on his knees in the dirt, both hands clutching his bleeding face. The dogs were running wildly around him, savage and frantic, almost drowning out his roar. Other shouts began to arise from across the enclosure, from the vegetable field, from the spinning huts. Aechna saw this, all in a moment that seemed to hang outside time. She felt it burn itself into her memory like the image of a flickering fire snatched in a blink. And it stayed before her eyes, even as she turned and ran across the scrubland towards the forest. She was free! She fled down curling valleys smothered by forest and laced with mumbling rivers. She scrambled over rocks. She squeezed between the trunks of trees, the image of her master and his fury always behind her, beneath arches thrown overhead by their limbs as they grappled and wrestled, into a darkness of scuffles and howls that she did not believe would ever end. She sniffed the air, and through the fractured crown of the forest, whose blooming oak branches hung heavy and dark over her head, she watched the sky for traces of smoke. She could not hear anyone following her, but that meant nothing. Her master was small, wiry, and could slip through the forest like a ghost. And even though her rock had struck home and surely left him half blind, he had spent enough nights roaming the forest to hardly need his eyes. Several times she saw a shape in the shadows that took his form. Those high shoulders, the head held low like a boar's. But it was only his spirit, if it was him at all. Let him stumble upon me, she thought. I will tear out his throat with my teeth. For days she continued, not knowing how far or how long she had travelled or what lay ahead. One night she dreamed that he crashed through the branches upon her and began tearing at her eyes. She awoke with a jump to find the fingers of a tree scratching her face. She panicked and struck at the skeletal hand, gripped the branch, twisted and tore it from the trunk, and with a scream hurled the broken limb into the undergrowth. The trees had grown around her overnight and tried to smother her in her sleep. This time they had failed, but they were becoming more treacherous the deeper she sank into the woods, the further she went from the taming prayers and offerings of men. She needed to escape the trees, which imprisoned her now as the barbed hedge of the farmstead had imprisoned her for 4 years. She forced her way upwards, climbing towards the breeze and the promising sky of early summer. By late afternoon, weary with the pain of hunger and fatigue, she had reached the crest of a hill with an open view. Looking to the west, she could see a long, narrow lake. Beyond the lake rose more forested hills, but to the south the hills sank towards the coast and the fine blue line of the sea. She had not seen the sea since the day the pirates had taken her across it, the day her master had brought her and dragged her into the mountains with her wrists bound to the dirt-stiff tail of a mule. Beyond that sea was her home. She remembered, many years before, walking from the shore with an apron full of mussels, gleaming black with foam, sipping warm broth while wrapped in a sheepskin rug. The dog that whined as it slept by the hearth. What was its name? She smothered the memories, as she always did. For all she knew, this was a different sea, facing the other end of the world. She told herself that the place she had known as a child, from which she had been wrenched and thrown across the ocean, was as distant and dreamlike now as the other world. When the pirates had taken her, she had been on the brink of womanhood. She had had her first bleeding in captivity alone, unwatched and uncared for. She had not been washed in the holy stream by her mother and grandmother as was required. She had not had the prayers and offerings that brought every child through the second birth into adulthood. She was left a child's soul in a woman's body, an aberration, an obscenity.